Hello, it's Jamie from the Jamie F Podcast Show. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. Thought I'd bring out a video on following on from my video around A-level results. I thought I'd go for something topical again, which definitely some of you guys might be thinking about is going to university. Just as a caveat, I just want to mention that this channel isn't going to be primarily focused on education-based things, but it just so happens that I felt that these are things that I just wanted to talk about now, but there will be a broader sort of there will be broader topics brought up in the channel, and hopefully there'll be something for everyone here. So just want to share my view on is it worth going to university? So I'm a university graduate myself. As I think I mentioned on the last video, I went to University of Kent, did a business course there. Really interesting, insightful, and obviously a major part of my life. I was there for 3 years and had a fantastic time. Again, keep on saying this, but I'll probably talk more about that specifically in another video. But I just wanted to bring up my thoughts on, is it actually worth going to university? So you've got to invest 3, 4, 5 years of your life into a university course. You've got the cost of doing so. Financially, you've got the opportunity costs, such as time implications of actually going to university to consider. So there's a lot of things you need to think about, and I'm going to break it down and sort of give my sort of an analysis on is it worth going, or just give you some food for thought, really. Now, obviously, I want to, as a disclaimer, just want to say, look, this is just my opinion. I'm not an expert in the field, and this is just coming from the perspective of a university graduate, now sort of in the professional workplace, and sort of what my thoughts are on how value-adding that degree is. There are obviously other factors to that as well, to consider, because you've got, which I'll come on to in the video as well. So I just want to add that disclaimer. It's just, I just want to add that caveat because, listen, I don't want you to go away based on this video and and completely change your plans. It's just to give you some food for thought from my perspective. So I'll start off by asking the question, why is it worth going to university, or is it worth going to university? And I think the thing you need to ask first is, why go to university? So there's a number of reasons why a person might want to go to university. Naturally, you've got the qualification that you're going to get. The opportunities that qualification could bring you in future, and just the general skills that you get from that as well. And naturally, that's obviously the big reason why people go. And it's just to give them opportunity to to potentially progress when they enter the workplace after doing the degree. But there are other reasons, and they're more secondary reasons, really, as opposed to the primary goal. But there's life experience, which you can break down into a number of factors, really, which is nightlife, for example, experiencing a new city or town, meeting new people, joining new societies and clubs and playing sports that you've not played before. There's also life experience as well, learning to be independent on your own, and sort of meet people independently. It's getting away from your parents as well, and sort of having your own place to a certain extent, managing your own bills and managing your own finances. So there's a lot of benefits to going to university, and certainly there are things that I really sort of really enjoy. There are aspects that I liked. Everything that I mentioned there, it's great to to get out and enjoy sort of different nightlife. At being in Kent, we weren't too far from London, so we did a few nights out in London. But even then, we where I was actually quite a small campus, so there wasn't like a huge amount there in terms of nightlife, but you still made the most of it and had a really good time, especially in your freshers year, where you sort of got a little bit more flexibility, go out a bit more. But yeah, so definitely some things to consider there. Certainly, from my perspective, really, really beneficial to go and gain that life experience and then get a qualification at the end of it. It was just sort of the cherry on the icing on top of the cake. So yeah, absolutely fantastic. And I'm going to come on to sort of my experience a bit more as well later. But what I would say is obviously one caveat. Well, I keep saying caveat, but one thing to consider is that there are some career paths that require a bespoke qualification. So it might be that if you're going into medicine, you obviously need to do the relevant course. If you're doing teaching, you may need to again do your teaching course or do a degree with a PGCE, for example. So there are scenarios where you're going to need that specific qualification. It's the only sort of way to sort of create a path into that career. So ultimately, if you have a certain career path in mind, sometimes you don't necessarily have a choice. Some careers it's impossible or incredibly difficult to get there without getting the relevant qualifications. I don't want to overgeneralize, but there are a lot of careers that you can do really well in and not have them qualifications. And that sort of leads me on to sort of why you wouldn't want to go. So in terms of why you wouldn't want to go, well, I mentioned a few things before, but there's the opportunity cost. I think is the biggest one. There is the financial cost, which we'll come on to in a second, but opportunity cost. So that's if for those who aren't aware what that actually means, it's the cost of doing one thing over another in layman's terms, really. So I go to university for 3 years instead of working for 3 years. Now, that's not to say you would have got a job for them 3 years, but you've had that 3-year window where you could have potentially worked your way up. And that may not sound significant, but 3 years is, it's quite a long time in the working environment, especially when you're going in at an entry level. Now, depending on how sort of ambitious you are and how much you want to push yourself, the recommended sort of period, and again, this is only rough guidance, so obviously take this with a pinch of salt, but it's generally expected that especially in the early stages, you look at moving on every sort of 12 to 18 months. And what I would say is just taking incremental steps to, get a slightly better job. And obviously you might say, start looking for jobs 6 to 12 months into your tenure, but it might take you 6 to 12 months to get a job. So, it might be a year, 18 months, 2 years before you get another job. But by the time you've done that course, on the one hand, you could have maybe got an entry level job and maybe had already moved once or twice. In that time, you could have had a decent pay rise, maybe a significant pay rise, and gained a lot of experience, skills, qualifications, who knows. So, definitely some food for thought there in regards to, is it better to do one or the other? Now, so talking from sort of my experience, when I left, I went into sort of an entry level banking position. I started looking at contracting work was quite big in PPI when I left university. Still is quite big at the moment, but it's obviously starting to die down a lot now. It's sort of the back end of things. But I started doing contracting straight away, and the money was fantastic, but it was hard. It was really, really difficult, and I just couldn't keep up with the pace of it. And it just wasn't for me, and I decided to move on. And I went into another role, which was PPI again. No, actually, I didn't go straight into PPI. So I actually went into another banking role, which was sort of same as investments, doing some like back office administration work. So, really, it was quite interesting, quite educational, but, didn't need my degree to do that. And it was only an entry level job. So it's not, as if it was designed for a degree in mind. But yeah, the people around me didn't really have a degree, and even people higher than me didn't necessarily have a degree. And those who did, again, no one was more advantaged or disadvantaged. But I found that through sort of moving around organisations, moving up the ladder, things like that, and just sort of, having that movement. Had I have maybe started working earlier, I'd have probably got a lot more traction and started to work my way up earlier, and maybe got to management earlier and things like that. So it's definitely something to consider when you're thinking about whether you should go to university or not. Actually, in this period of time, could I make more progress from a working perspective? So definitely that's something to bear in mind. Now, another thing as well is that there's a lot of options out there at the moment as well. So, and there's some, when I was looking in, at careers and things like that, it was very heavily geared towards, you look at either going to university, or effectively you're not going to really, um, achieve much. Otherwise, you'll go into a trade or something like that. Whereas now there's obviously some really good professional apprenticeships out there, which are quite good starting salaries, very competitive, and offer quite good, paths to progression as well. So, some really good things to consider. So it's not all, there's a lot more options out there. Now, obviously at the moment we're in a, sort of, still in the midst of a global pandemic, so the workplace is a little bit unusual at the moment. So obviously it's going to be different now, but once the economy and the country gets back to where it should be, then I'd imagine that there'll be quite a decent amount of opportunity again for school leavers. But yeah, so that's obviously some thoughts on why not to go. And I suppose another thing to consider as well is, are there other qualifications you can do instead of a degree? So some good qualifications you can do that people aren't really aware of are professional qualifications. And now some of these, don't get wrong, can be quite expensive, but some can actually be quite inexpensive, and offer quite good rewards and benefits, for you to get into that industry. So a really good example is the what's called a CMAP qualification, which can get you into mortgage advice. Actually quite inexpensive if you pass that first time. I think you pay about 100. It's 3 modules, and it's roughly about 170 to 200 pound per module. So I think it comes in at about 500, 600, 700 pounds, something like that. So not all that expensive, but then that can open the door. That qualification then enables you to become a mortgage advisor. Now, probably what I would say is you probably do need a little bit of, sort of banking experience, or, just some customer service telephony type, experience to go with that, just to kind of complement that. But that's something you could do while you do like a customer service type job. Do your CMAP qualification on the side for a year, 6 months, or how long it takes you. Could even do it. You can do it quicker if you really want to. But you could take 6 months, a year to do that. You're getting your experience from your job, you're getting paid, you're using that to put towards your qualification, and then at the end of that, you've got your CMAP, and you go, right, I can go and get look for mortgage advisor jobs now, and you can have a look at what opportunities are out there. And that's just one example. There's so many professional qualifications out there that to look at, and some organisations as well, quite well funded to support you with that. They'll either partially pay or they'll fully pay for it. So getting into a good corporation can actually enable you to do qualifications for nothing, or get them subsidized, and and you're getting that skill and qualification, and you can use that as a platform to move on to. So yeah, definitely some food for thought, and some things that you may not have considered before. It's not all that widely advertised, professional qualifications, but there's lots to think about. Maybe if what I would say is, if you are a younger person who's on the fence about, do I go to university, do I leave school, try and get a job, maybe take some time, a couple of weeks to research, or if you're able to spend that time, definitely take some time though to research, what kind of areas do I want to go into? Do I think what kind of what's the barriers to entry, or what do I need to do to achieve that? Do I need a degree? Does that require or does that require a professional qualification? Is it something that I can start at the bottom and work my way up? And what's the general time scale? Is on average, if I spend 10 years in that industry, will I get to X position? So there are things to consider as well. So yeah, definitely some things to think about there about why not to go or why to go to university. So just finally, just want to just really talk about my experience. Now, I won't talk about the ins and outs of university life. I think, again, I'm probably going to save that for another video, maybe. Don't want to go into too much detail. I don't want to granular level detail and tell you about, the ins and outs and, what happens on nights outs and things like that. But yeah, definitely, just in terms of leaving university, big question was, did I need my degree to sort of get where I am right now? Well, first of all, I'm still quite in the early stages of my career. So I graduated from university, probably that's about 7 years ago, something like that. Yeah, give or take somewhere around that. So I'm still quite early in. I've moved around quite a lot. I think I've had, if I look at my sort of permanent, well, sort of the non-contracting jobs, I've had quite a few. So I've had about 6, 7 different roles since moving. So my average is I sort of move on every year. Is sort of as a guide. And I think that's important while you're sort of in the early stages. You've got to keep things fresh and, keep moving on, because one thing that happens to a lot of people, and I used to find this, people complaining, oh, I don't want to be doing this job, it doesn't pay enough, and all the rest of it. And they've been sitting there for years and they haven't done anything about it. And it's like, you know what? You need to be proactive. You need to be, if you want to move on and you want to progress, you've got to keep on putting yourself out there, and you're going to have to learn to be resilient and deal with rejection, because you're going to get a lot of rejections. I've had so many job rejections, but you just got to keep pushing on, keep learning, keep getting your feedback. Anything you can do to enhance your skills in your role, do it, and then use that as a platform. But that's probably, again, another topic for another video potentially, about sort of my tips and tricks for getting on, in your career. And I'm by no means in a a senior position, or it's certainly, I'm still early stages, as I said. But if I can help a graduate or a school leaver or someone like that, or just someone who's in a bit of a rut, then I'm happy to do that. But yeah, so big question I was going to ask before I went off on a bit of a tangent. Did I need my degree? Well, at the moment, to be perfectly honest, no, it hasn't really benefited me. I think every role that I've been in hasn't required that degree. I could have got it without, and ultimately, in the kind of sort of financial services industry that I've been in, probably could have got further without a degree, in all honesty. But it swings and roundabouts. I personally don't regret going to university. I think, based on the fact that the life experience, the fun I had, the friends I met, the experience that I got, I don't regret it one bit. Met some really good friends there and had a really good time. I grew as a person there, and as I said, it was worthwhile for just more than the qualification. That's not to say that the qualification won't come in handy in future. But since then, I have done quite a few professional qualifications. Done one which was really quite high level, to be honest. So that I think that actually trumps my degree now. So it's something. It's still there. You've always got that to fall back on, which is a good thing. And I can say, yeah, I've got my degree, but I've also got these qualifications that I've done since graduating from uni as well. So again, having the degree didn't necessarily put me in a better position for them qualifications. I was just proactive and just asked us, like, can I do these? I want to do this. Is this something I can work towards? It was like, yeah, sure. But yeah, so it's definitely not hindered me, but hasn't helped me either. Now, overall, I think, had I have left the workplace, I mean, again, we're talking about a scenario that I don't know how things would have panned out. Obviously, if I'd have left school without a degree, but had I have left school without a degree, gone into, say, financial services, for example, I'd be further on what I am now, more than likely. But ultimately, it's 3 years out my life, and I'd have gone straight into work. I mean, again, you don't know how that would have impacted you, because you're not having you're going straight to school, straight into into work, and without having that mental sort of break. Because one thing the university does provide, yeah, it can be stressful at times, but you do get quite a lot of flexibility and freedom as well. So you're not working, you're not doing your 9 to 5, 5 days a week. Yeah, you're in lectures and things like that, but that's only 8, 10, 12 hours a week, whatever it might be. Plus, obviously, what you got to do to study, but you can kind of get away with it really, and kind of have a little bit of an easier life in terms of, well, it's a bit more of a laid back lifestyle, let's put it that way. So you're not diving straight into, having to go into work and having that force straight upon you really. So yeah, there's that benefit. But yeah, overall, who knows? I maybe could have got a bit further, but do I regret doing the degree? Absolutely not. It's there. I've always got it. I've built on since then as well. I've got more qualifications, and the more strings to your bow, the better, really. And I can keep building experience. As I said, I've made quite a lot of moves and move on sort of typically every 12, 18 months anyway. So, I'm always getting more and more experience. So it's only a matter of time really before, I, keep progressing in my career. So yeah, that's just sort of my thoughts on it anyway. It's definitely an interesting debate. My sort of overall take would be, and again, I'm not an expert in this field, so please don't use this as a gospel by any means. But I'd say, if you've got a specialised field that requires, probably, as I said before, look at what areas you want to go into as a rough guide. And not everyone knows that when they leave school, let's be honest, but look at what areas you want to go into. What does that require? Does that require a degree? Does it require this qualification? Or is it more just, building from the bottom, working your way up sort of position? Work out what you need. Is a degree going to be appropriate? If so, go for it. Go for the degree. If not, maybe look at the other options. But at the same time, if you want to do the degree anyway, if you want to kind of get some life experience and get a bit more out of that as well as the qualification, then go for it as well. But yeah, that's my thoughts anyway. Just again, always worth just being as critical as you can and just thinking about, is this the right thing? Because it is expensive to go to university. The fees themselves aren't too bad because they come out your wages quite proportionate. It's going to be proportionate to your wages anyway, so it's not going to it's not going to be too costly for you when you start working. But you've just got to think about these things, and weigh it all up. And it's not just the cost of actually doing the course, but it's the cost while you're there. Depending on what your household income is, you may not have enough, financially. You may not get enough support financially from the government to actually sustain you, so you have to then work or get support from your family, financially. So there's a lot to consider there, and just you've got to think carefully around, is it financially viable, or again, this is going to be potentially another video, but is it worth potentially taking a gap year, saving up, and then having a little bit of time to think about your options. And then if you do go to uni, you've got a nest egg there, or you've got a little bit of money behind you to help when you're there. But that's everything from me, and hopefully that does help. As I said, the summary from myself is, have a think about your options, weigh up, is university right for what you want to do in your career, or where you want to go in your life? And if it is, go for it. If not, take some time to think. You can always go to university later on, so there's no rush to do that either. So yeah, hope this was insightful, and helps even just one person. That'd be great. If you've got any questions, drop them in the comment section. I'll try and interact. Yeah, and just keep an eye out. I'm going to keep posting videos. I'm going to try and do quite a few videos a week, and just keep the momentum going, and obviously just try and grow the channel. I'm going to do more. I'm going to try and get podcasts going. Looking at hopefully doing a podcast with my wife talking about university as well, and both our experiences and how that differs. So watch out for that one. But that's everything from me. Thanks for thanks for tuning in. If you're still watching, I don't know why you're still watching, but no, but honestly, it's really appreciated. And speak to you all soon.